All right, let's go to the third commandment now. We've covered the first and second commandment. Let's go to the third. The third commandment says, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Now this one, most scholars believe the patriarch Job lived before Moses, perhaps around the time of Abraham and Isaac. Now, in other words, that's when the book was actually written, that Job existed before the time of Moses. All right, Job was concerned that his children might have been taking God's name in vain, and he knew that was wrong. Now notice what Job says in Job 1 and verse 5. And it was so when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, now he's doing this for his children. He's sanctifying his children, he's setting them apart, and he's thinking in his mind, for Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned. Okay, what is sin? The breaking of God's law. And cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. So what's the point? Well, the point is that Job, which was written before Moses, understood that taking God's name in vain was a sin, which is the third commandment. All right. The fourth commandment tells us to remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. That's Exodus 20 and verse 8. Now, you can only remember something if it already existed. Critical point. Okay, Exodus 16 verse 23 and verse 28. Then Moses said to them, this is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Then Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it, that is manna, in the field. 6 days shall you gather it, that is the manna, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none. Now, the miracle of the manna is fascinating. Manna fell from heaven, which was a type of bread, sort of like a sweet honey tasting bread, sort of like Krispy Kreme donut, maybe. No, just kidding. But, they say that Krispy Kreme donuts and a hot dog is probably the two worst things that you can eat. At least that's what I've heard. Anyway, it probably wasn't a Krispy Kreme. But anyway, it was bread, manna, that had a honey taste to it, whatever. Okay. All right, the miracle of the manna is that, they were told to gather enough for each day. But if they gathered enough for 2 days, it would rot. What was left over would rot and stink. Okay. But on Friday evening, right, in preparation for the Sabbath, they were to gather up twice as much. And they were able to keep it over until the Sabbath day, and it would not rot or breed worms or anything like that. Now, it was a miracle, okay? This miracle went on for 40 years, where the bread was preserved Friday evening when they would gather twice as much so they wouldn't have to be out there on the Sabbath. People have questions, they say, well, what about, we can't keep the Sabbath today. What about refrigerated trucks? What about grocery stores? Well, in this case, this was a 40-year miracle that occurred where God preserved this bread for 40 years, okay? So is the Sabbath important to God? Oh, absolutely. It may not be important to you, but it is important to God. Okay. Now, it happened that some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather it, but found none. Okay, this was the Sabbath. There was none out there that fell from heaven. All right. And the Lord said to Moses, how long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? Well, what is this talking about? What commandments and laws? Well, the commandments and laws that existed since creation, the creation of man.
Check us out on the web at isthatreallyinthebible.com.